Hello.
Hello,
Welcome
hello,
to
hello.
Anxiety, Depression, and the Real Questions. I am Kimmy,
And I'm Claire.
and yeah, this is
I feel like we need
uh
to preface it this one it's not it has nothing to do with the topic. It's just we've been both disasters. Um would you say all week? I feel like all week would be a good
so
description.
I feel like a good description of like how my week has gone is that gif of Kitty from that 70s show with the
Yes.
bottle of tequila, and she's just pouring the full bottle of
Yes.
tequila into the blender. And like there's
Yes.
usually like a caption or like the meme caption or whatever that's like it's only Tuesday.
Oh my gosh.
And that's just changed from it's only Monday, it's only Tuesday, it's only Wednesday, like every day of this week. Because like this week has literally just taken me and like the Hulk when he grabs Loki in the first
Exactly.
Avengers movie. Like
Exactly.
2020 is the Hulk and I am Loki.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
And that
Completely.
is how everything is going. And I'm trying really hard to stay like positive and like realize that there are very many good things happening in my life. And like I have a lot of reasons to be happy because like I'm engaged
Hmm.
to uh, someone that I love with my whole heart and
Uh-huh.
want to spend the rest of my life with, even if I want to strangle him sometimes.
Right. That's fair.
Which is, I think, how relationships, good, healthy relationships, are when you don't strangle them,
Yes.
but you sometimes get that urge.
Yes. Not sure if I agree, but yes. I know
um,
what you mean.
and like I'm trying to remind myself that those are really good things that are happening.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, it's like, hi, I'm 23 and unemployed.
I know. I know.
But, I'm getting married
Yeah.
to the love of my life,
Yep.
and we love each other very much, and we care about each other,
Yeah. It's good.
and that that's
Yeah. It is
it's a thing.
it's a good happy thing. In spite of your professional life being a downer, your love life thriving. So everything's good. My love life is non-existent, and
But you kind of like it that
I
way.
do. I'm not. Yeah, it's not a complaint, more of an observation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and now I am alone in a state all by myself, and so my job, so my professional life is thriving, but my social life is non-existent. So I feel like 2020 does us all wrong in a way. It's not
Yeah,
it's not
everything's
really great no
fine.
matter how you swing it. So that's how it be.
Everything's fine. Everything's fine. What are you talking about?
Which is why our topic for today is therapy.
Therapy. What's
It
up? Therapy is
seems
so
so
important.
appropriate because we're going through it right now to talk about the fact that one, everyone needs therapy, but also different therapy experiences and what that says about like what's a good therapist and like what they
And
actually do for you,
how much it
how much it
helps.
helps.
Like, I never realized how much therapy could help me until I found a good therapist that worked for
Yes,
me.
yes.
Because the few experiences that I had before I found my therapist were horrible.
Mm-hmm.
And I hated everything about them. And I was miserable. Like, I dreaded going to see them.
Yeah, you shouldn't feel that way.
And like I never wanted to talk to them, and it was just horrible. And like the first experience I had was with student health, and
Mm-hmm.
like I'm bitter against student health right now specifically, but we don't have to talk about that. um but when I went to student health about 3 weeks in, they were like, yeah, we don't know how to help you. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we can't help you. And they're like, we're not used to people with your kinds of problems. And I was like, what? What do you mean my kinds of problems? Like actual depression?
Yeah. What do you mean? I
She
have
was, and
depression.
in fairness, student health, like a lot of their therapists and counselors there are just graduate students getting their hours, which like I understand. I get it. But at the same time, like you need someone there that can take those cases that they can't handle. Because she straight up was like, she's like, I'm not used to someone who like is having these kinds of issues. She's like, I'm more used to, I'm really stressed about this big test coming up, or my boyfriend just broke up with me. And I was like, well, that's not, I'm having existential things. Like, I kind of don't see any point in living. And she was like, yeah, I don't know how to deal with that. And I was like, cool. She's like, so bye. And I was like,
okay.
I don't think that's how it's supposed to work, but okay? Question mark?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's not good.
Because, what? Excuse me?
Like, props for her for not trying to fix something that she's not qualified to, but that's when you refer them to someone who is, not just be like, sorry, bye. Good Lord.
Can't help you by. And that was like the peak of when I was so bad. Like,
yeah.
and then my doctor, the PA at the time, he was like, you need to find a therapist. He's like, we need to find you counseling or therapy or something. Because he's like, yeah, the meds are going to help, but like, that's not all you need. Like, you can't just start taking pills and be fine. He's like, that's not how this works. And so I remember he gave me like this super long list of therapists that they recommended, right? And then I had to go through that list with my mom and figure out who was in network for our insurance.
No.
And then when I found one who was in network for our insurance, he wasn't accepting new patients, but he had a recent graduate who was getting her hours, who was nice enough, but it just wasn't a good fit. And like, I didn't like that every time she was just immediately like, okay, so here's how we can fix this. Like, here's what you can do to fix it. And I was like, that's not what I feel like this should be. And it was always just like very stressful to go.
Yeah.
And very stressful to be there.
Yeah.
And so after I quit seeing her, which I just stopped going, like I just stopped making appointments with her. I didn't have counseling or therapy for two years. Because the next time I started going to therapy was last spring.
Yeah.
And I realized, ooh, I think I might need it.
Yeah.
And I searched and I searched and I searched, and I had to like make sure it was good with insurance and make sure it was good with all of that. And then I found my therapist now. And she's great. Like the first couple of months were a little weird.
Yep.
Because it was just us figuring out kind of the dynamic and us figuring each other out. And me realizing like, okay, this is a space where I don't have to feel like ashamed to admit things.
Yeah.
I just need to talk it out.
Yep. Yes.
But one thing we realized, I think it was last summer, you and I realized, I'm really bad about like withholding information, whether it's on purpose or not. And being like, yeah, everything's fine.
Yeah.
Nothing's wrong right now. Yeah, everything's good. Nothing bad. I had a mental breakdown like 3 weeks ago, but it's fine.
It's fine.
We don't need to talk about it. I don't remember it, so it's fine.
No, it's fine. It's good. It's fine.
And then she realized, she was like, oh. So once I told her I did that, she goes, oh, so I can push harder.
And you were like, oh.
And I was like, yeah, honestly, you probably should. And so now, literally, like sometimes, especially I would say last fall and this past spring, we would get on topics and I'd just be talking about my students and like what was going on. And she's like, so you use this typically as a tactic to avoid something? She's like, you typically like start talking about your students or like other things about other people, like when you're trying to avoid something. So, what are you trying to avoid here? And I was like,
Dang.
okay, maybe I wasn't doing it consciously, but now that you pointed it out, yes, I am. But I don't want to dig into what I'm avoiding because I don't know what I'm avoiding right now, but I know I'm avoiding something.
Yeah, definitely. Oh my gosh, that is crazy. Yeah, I know. I agree with the whole like the first few the first little while is weird, but also I remember you saying when you first saw your therapist that you really liked her. And I remember me saying that I really liked my therapist when I first saw her. Like there is an instant like feeling. It's not always like great, but there is like you you do want to go back, but you don't really like get it and get into it. That takes a little while.
And
Because we're figuring each other out. But I remember I went to see someone first. Oh, sorry, I interrupted you.
no, you're fine.
Keep
going.
I went to see someone that like ended up not being in my insurance, but she was really great. But the only reason I didn't keep seeing her is because of insurance, and I'm really glad I ended up with the person that I did. But in the first session, she asked me a question, and this is like an example of like a positive thing, where I was like talking, and then she goes, "How do you like care for yourself? Like, how do you do self-care?" And I was like, I don't know how to answer that question.
What is that?
So like out of nowhere, already we had gotten to like an issue, which shows that she's a good therapist. And then when I went to the other one, we ended up going like in a different direction, but still kind of same thing. Like they are trained to like listen to you and to figure it out and to ask productive questions, like, and then to the point where you end up figuring each other out and you can get to the bottom of things really quickly. It's super cool. Okay.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say?
Like I still have those days sometimes where I'm like, I don't want to go to therapy. But then like in deep down inside of me, I'm like, I need it because I'm saying I don't want to go. I need to go.
There you go.
And like the pandemic has been weird, and luckily like we were able to transition to virtual counseling, and it's been great. But before that, we were doing EMDR therapy, which was it was great, honestly. I would recommend it if they're trained and certified.
Mm-hmm. And if it's like the type of thing you need.
Yeah, because it's typically for like post-traumatic stress.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what got me first. She was like, I think I want to try like EMDR with you because some of these things that you do, like it fits. And she's like, now typically it's used for PTSD. And I was like, but I don't have PTSD. And she goes, well, by the definition of actual PTSD, you kind of do. And I was like, okay, you're right. Because she was like listing stuff off and I was like, fair. Do I like it? No. But fair.
Mm-hmm.
And she's been like, it's like a voice of reason.
Yeah.
That's like really great. But that voice of reason is like 100% just looking out for your better interests.
Yep.
But also like it's very clear that they completely understand where you're coming from.
Yes.
Because like when Tyler and I went through our really rough patch and we ended up breaking up, she was like, okay, here's how we can look at this in a healthy way. And when we were like getting back together and trying to work things out, she was like, okay, here's how you two can like work together on this. And she was like recommending books and she was like, I think you'll really like this and this and this. And that's like really great. And then this summer, it's been really good. And like this past, I guess 6 months, I would say, have been really great because she'll just be sitting there and she'll be like, I feel like you're avoiding something.
And you're like,
what you avoiding? And I'm like,
why do you have to come at me like that? Like,
and what I love is, so I went for a while. I was twice a week, and then I was once a week, and then I was once every 2 weeks, and then I went back to twice a week. After Tyler and I got back together, and then I went down to once every week, and that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah,
it's once a week.
For me,
and
I
it's great.
Started let's see. Not last winter, but the winter before. No, like two
First
winters.
semester of grad school?
No, it was like this the winter like before grad school, like my senior year. So that would
Okay.
have been, ooh, that's a long time then. Dang. I didn't realize it had been that long. And then I like stopped seeing her in March. Um, one, because my insurance, there was issues, but also I was good. And B, I was moving to Michigan. So all of those things combined, we were like, okay, this is actually kind of good timing to like just be like, well, and we had already progressed to once a month. Um, yeah, once a month. I don't think we did like every other month because that's like just really long. But we did once a month, and before that it was every 3 weeks, and then before that it was every 2 weeks, and then it was once a week for a really really long time. That was the bulk of it, was once a week. Um, and then there were times we never did twice a week, but there were times where we met twice a week, because I would basically like call her and schedule an emergency session, and we would meet, and then I would still come for my regularly scheduled meeting, um, and because that didn't happen very often, and so we just sort of like took it as it goes, and she is was really great for that because she was kind of flexible.
And
um,
I think that's another sign of a really good therapist.
exactly, where I was just like, because for me, especially during the really bad times, I didn't know what advice to listen to, if that makes sense.
No,
Um,
that completely makes
and
sense.
I like, because I really trust my parents, but they did not like fully understand like what was going on, and so they really talked to me about like spiritual things, um, and like were encouraging in that way and encouraging like just like loving me and reminding me to take care of myself and like being there for me and that kind of thing. But like then um my friends kind of same thing, but like when advice is coming through that sort of way, it's like it's not like knowledge based advice, it's just like love
We care
based
about you.
advice,
Yeah. It's
which
like
is
they just
good.
want you to be
They
okay,
just
which
want you
is
to be okay,
completely
but they don't
understandable.
understand. And so, in that sense, like therapy was really important for me because I was able to go someone who like knows all the things and is able to tell me, and I really like appreciate this because I'm a like I like to understand things. She was like, this is how the brain works. Like this is what this is. This is. And since she was also a Christian, it wasn't just coming from a brain place or just coming from knowledge or it was coming from all of it, and also personal experience that she had had, that we figured out really quickly. It was good for us as like in our therapy like relationship for her to like share some of that with me, whereas in a lot of cases
You
that'd be
wouldn't share that,
so
yeah.
weird. No, like that would be
Hmm.
like your therapist is not going to talk about her problems, you know, to you be like, yeah, so I kind of like I've been going through some stuff like, and you're like, wait, I'm no, but
Wait,
like,
I'm paying you
wait,
though, but
oh my gosh, but like with us, because of the way I am, um, she would go like, yeah, like this is what this was like for me, though it is different because hers was mainly depression. Like, oh, sorry, I have a hair in my mouth. There it is.
gross.
It was just shut up. And but yeah, like we figured that out, that like it helps me to have like personal experience, um,
Hmm.
and like being like, this is normal and this isn't, like this happens and like this is like textbook case medical anxiety, and then this is like 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 putting things into categories, getting language. She told me about like obviously like specific like therapy tools and stuff like that, But yeah.
And one thing that I've always appreciated, because what's funny is the therapist, we found out later, the therapist that you went to once
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. You're so
was
right.
actually ended up being my
You're
therapist.
so, I forgot about that. Yes, okay, yeah, the
And
person I was talking about when I went to,
like
that's
your
the
insurance didn't
therapist
work
that
out,
you see now.
but it's my therapist. And then we found out
Sweet
later.
lady. Oh my gosh.
We found out later, like I was coming in for like a reschedule appointment, I think, and one of our other friends was leaving, and she was like, "Oh my gosh."
Yes.
Because we'd been talking to her about therapy, and
Mhm.
she decided to go find a therapist, and we were like,
Yes,
"Oh." So then
this
she and
lady
I
is,
would like
super
meet
cool.
up on certain days, and she'd be like, "All right, it's time for me to go see her," and we would like
Aw.
have conversations about it,
Yes,
and it
she's
was so
good,
great.
man.
But like one thing for me, and I'm gonna link it in the description when I post this, was Psychology Today's website. Because you can put in your location and you can put in like certain
Yes.
specifications.
That's
You
how
can
I
put
do it
in
too.
your insurance and it
Yes.
will sort like who accepts what.
Yep.
And that's how I found my therapist, because I was like, I do want a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want someone who is not, I can feel completely comfortable sharing my beliefs with.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I also want someone who obviously accepts insurance and this and that, like all of this. And it took me a few people on the website like that I went through.
Same.
But the first couple, like one of them was like, it wasn't necessarily clear on her website that she was only a counselor for mothers. But once I called them, they're like, oh yeah, she like really only focuses, like she'll, like single women are okay, but like she mostly focuses on like women, especially women who are like dealing with postpartum. And I was like, oh, okay, that's not me.
Yeah, you're like,
But
okay.
thanks. Good luck with that. And what even helped even more was like once I found my therapist, like, well, I was still living in Lubbock. It was like 2 minutes away from my apartment. And so like in the times when I was not getting out of bed because, you know, depression, I'd like look up and be like, I have 3 minutes to get there, and I would just roll out of bed.
LOL.
And go climb into my car and just drive there and be like, hello, I am half asleep, but you know what, look at me, I finally made it to one. Because there was a while where I would miss, like I think 2 weeks in a row, and she was like, do we need to like find you a different counselor, like she's like, is it okay? And I was like, honestly, I'm just very not here for anything. And she was like, okay, no, valid.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one thing that I really have always appreciated about her. She's always very clear about it. She's like, I'm not invalidating your feelings because I think that what you are feeling is important and valid.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not healthy.
Yep.
And we need to think about a way to reframe this, because that's what she did this week with me. It was so funny because we were sitting there yesterday and she's kind of looking at me and she's like, she's like, that was not a good, I've been better. And I was like, it's not, I know, I'm not doing okay right now.
Yep.
And I was talking and she goes, so your feelings are valid. And she's like, I want to make that clear. And I'm not trying to be mean. But she was like, I want to help you. And we've talked before about like anxiety and depression being like a black hole.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, and pushing you towards that black hole is not helping you. So I'm trying to pull you away from the black hole. And by doing that, I need to say this. And she was like, don't do this. Don't do this. And I was talking about a lot of anxiety because it's looking like I'm going to need to move. Because, like, you know, all this other stuff. And Tyler and I are getting married and all these things. And she, like, I said something that, like, concerned her for a second. And she was like, do not get married as a backup plan. And she was like, do not ever make him feel like a backup plan, because it's not fair to him and it's not fair to you. And I was like, you right. It's not my backup plan. I promise.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to marry him. And she was like, okay, good. But she was like, you just said something that worried me.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to make this clear that that's not what you were doing. And I was like, it's not, I promise. And she's like, okay, we're fine.
Yeah.
But I love, yesterday it showed me even more like how much I appreciate her and how like great of a fit she is, because she's totally willing to be like, listen, I'm not being mean, but I'm gonna push you here.
Yeah.
Because you need it. And
she
that is
out
what
that
you
that
need.
Works with you. Yes, I know. That's like, oh, it's so good. Like, they are trying to figure out like how your brain works and help you. Like, you get to know them, and that's what they're meant to do. So if you go in and you get a weird feeling, also I want to talk about, like, because we've mentioned this a couple times, but like how hard it is to find one. Not just
Oh my
like
gosh,
once you
yes.
try one, it doesn't work kind of thing, which is totally real, but also just like even starting the process.
It's scary
And it's
because it's
one
like, where do you
terrifying,
start?
especially when your thing is depression and anxiety. It seems overwhelming to try and like accomplish that task. For a lot of them, I had to call, and I hate calling people. Um, when you do call, yeah, it's like, oh, I'm actually not taking patients, and you're like, that's not what it said, or like the insurance and all this stuff, and you're worried about money, and you're worried about, it's just so much that it almost puts you off from doing it.
That's totally what put me
And
off from it for 2
and
years.
for a long time, like it took like a really like several months of searching for me. And I'm not even really sure if I did start in the winter. It might have even been like later in the spring, because it just took so long for me to figure everything out. My insurance was not super like helpful in figuring stuff out. Like, they did it this sort of like, it was just all really confusing. Like, that just because like a person like on the website that it said that their
Hmm.
insurance, that my insurance that I'm in was covered, that actually doesn't mean anything for mental health coverage. If it was mental health coverage in my insurance, it was called something else. But who was going to tell me that?
Yeah, who
Nobody.
tells you that?
We had to call and get like deep, me and my mom like had to get like deep within the insurance company. But we also, for us, insurance was a priority because
It's
um,
expensive
the
without it.
stress of money was like a factor. And so it would make so much more sense that I could find someone that I liked that was under my insurance and like do that work. But for some people, like my friend right now, um, just because of the nature of her job, like, and the amount of like money she makes, she's an engineer, like she's cool. Like, she is not super worried about like insurance, and so she's able to just like find one, you know? And for her, that's like a different type of priority. Um, but yeah, that made it like 10 times more complicated, um, because if every session is $100,
Adds up so quickly.
holy crap. Whereas I, even if it's 60, like,
Adds up.
I can't do it. If I'm going once a week, uh,
I think mine with insurance is about 60 a session,
see, mine
which
with
is
insurance, 25.
bruh.
Crazy.
But I love her, so I'm not
Oh,
leaving.
I know, exactly. Um,
It's too late for
you're
me
like,
now.
oh yeah, that's the thing. You kind of have to make like choices at that point. But like, it was, I was able after time to find somebody that I like, we clicked, and insurance, and that is beautiful. It was really stressful and hard to find one, but like, you
It's a
can
process.
do it. It is a process. And honestly, yeah, like pulling up the website and being like, okay, I'm gonna find a therapist. Holy crap! Like, so stressful,
And
ridiculously stressful.
sometimes their like personal website will say that they're accepting a certain insurance, and you'll call them and they'll be like, actually, I just stopped accepting
Yes,
that
a lot of
insurance.
them. It's
And it's like,
very fluid.
excuse me, hi, I understand, but also like, hi, I'm having a lot of
Like,
trouble
please
right
help
now,
me.
and uh but in all honesty, I'm glad I didn't end up seeing a bunch of those different therapists that like I had trouble getting in contact with.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one right before I found mine. I contacted them and they were like, "Oh yeah, this, and this," and they were talking, and I gave them like my insurance information, and they were like, "Oh yeah, so it'll be $200 a session with insurance," and I was like, "Aha, bye!"
Exactly.
Like, that is ridiculous. Excuse you, and I know that deters so many people because it's expensive, but like you can find someone who you can click with, but also meets your like monetary needs,
Mm-hmm. It is possible.
and Like my therapist, she's about to go on maternity leave. And it's funny because right when I first started seeing her, she'd had her first kid. Like she was like coming back from maternity leave when I first started seeing her. And now she's about to go on maternity leave again.
Good
and
Lord.
I'm just like, and so like I love it because a lot of my sessions now, like if I'm doing okay, I'm just like, so how you feeling?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because my sister-in-law is also pregnant and they're like around the same time. And so I'm like, yeah, I was like, you're pregnant, like you're big pregnant, like right through the middle of the summer. And she was like, yesterday she just like sat there for a second, looked at the camera and was like, yeah.
That's bad news.
I was like,
I know. Yeah.
but I love it. It's like,
me too. I did the same thing with my therapist, not because she was pregnant, but just like the personal stuff. Like her daughter.
you need to have that
and,
kind of
like,
relationship
yeah,
sometimes.
like we would, I would ask her how her daughter was because she has an adopted daughter, and like, she would just be like, and sometimes she would have to cancel appointments. She was like, oh my gosh, we have to like take the dog to the vet. It's been crazy, and I'm like, yeah, no problem. Like we'll just do that, and like, we would just text back and forth kind of thing, like, and it made me feel safe to go in there, even when I was like, even when it wasn't great, you know, like even
it
when
like
yeah,
it like humanizes them for you, because a lot of times people in positions like that, they're not, and it's not necessarily their own fault. It's not necessarily any one person's fault. It's just like sometimes they just aren't humanized right for you.
Mm-hmm.
And like when they let you know about those real issues, it's like you are a person too.
Yes.
You are dealing with your own life issues as well.
Yes.
So like a few weeks ago, I mean, it's happened multiple times, but like her kid has gotten sick and she'll just email me or text me and she'll be like, hey, I know it's super last minute, but you know, can we either reschedule or just docs this week?
Yep.
And it's always just like, yeah, sure. Like only a couple of times there was like one time in the spring that she had to do that, and I texted her that Thursday and was like, hi, I know I said I could make it till next Tuesday, but I can't. Do you have an availability tomorrow?
Like, yeah.
Are you busy? And then a few weeks ago when I was going through all that rough stuff with my parents, I texted her about an hour before my session was supposed to start and was like, out of curiosity, is there anybody before me today? Can we start 30 minutes early? Because like, I'm not okay right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny too because like she was like, yeah, sure. And so she like, we were trying to get the link to work because it's obviously like teletherapy right now.
Mm-hmm.
And like the link wasn't working for either of us. And she was like, what is happening? And I was like, what is happening? And we get in there like right at my normal time. And I was like, hi, I'm sorry for getting you ready 30 minutes early and not having that 30 minutes.
Yep.
But it's just, and one thing I was really bad about for a while was I vented to friends way too much. If that makes sense. Like I relied on my friends to be my therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And while some friends are okay with that, some friends can't handle that.
Mm-hmm.
Like they can't take it. They don't want to. And if they don't want to, that's perfectly understandable.
Mm-hmm.
Because your friends, they're your friends. They're not your therapist.
Yep.
Like, and they don't know how to deal with a lot of that stuff. And they can't, like, they're not trained.
Yep. Love-based, not knowledge-based.
Exactly. So it's like, you can't expect them to always just sit and listen to your problems. Like, it's nice if your friend is willing to do that.
Yep.
But at the same time, like,
yeah, they can be your support
problems,
system, but like therapists like will kind of like ask you like how your support system is, and then you can have a good one, but yeah, that means like, and you also need a therapist, like,
and a therapist will help you like build up a support system for yourself,
yeah,
to help the people around you support you. And like, because I mean that's one thing, and like one thing I love it when she says to me, she's like, be kind to yourself.
Yep.
Because that's like a big problem for me, is I'm sitting there going like, I'm an absolute moron and I hate myself.
Yep.
I'm the worst person in the world.
Yes.
And she'll like, as we're ending a session, she'll just be like, be nice to yourself.
I know.
Be kind to
Mine
yourself.
Mine is, she would tell me, be gentle with myself. We would also, I don't know if I've talked about this. I can't remember if I've talked about this in the one that wasn't meant to be the one like first time we talked about anxiety that wasn't actually
Mhm.
recorded, or if I've talked about it in one that actually was. But it's one of my favorite things. Like me and my therapist figured out when it was an emergency session, and I hadn't slept that night at all, and so I was like texted her at like 6 a.m. being like, I'm so sorry if you're asleep. Do you have anything today? And she was like, 8 a.m., girl. And I was like, well, let's freaking do it. And so I roll in, like, haven't slept in a really long time, crazy eyes. And she's like, okay, we've we've got a all right with here's like we got a to-do list here, like we've got to figure like okay, number one, like you're gonna go home and you're gonna eat something, like you have to put something in your body or else your brain is just gonna get worse, and then you should probably like exercise to help get you tired and get your adrenaline out, because next thing on the list is sleep, like you actually need sleep. But she was like, here's our main theme though, we're gonna keep it light, like we're gonna keep it fluffy. That's my favorite thing.
Mhm.
Keep it fluffy. Like, because my tendency when I'm having a bad day is to try and figure out why I'm having a bad day and like deal with it. Like like I need to go talk about it with my dad or like something, or like think deeply, or like sit there and like listen to sad music and like, oh my gosh, which sometimes is fine, right? But when you're crazy, like you're not even like you can't even like finish like a complete thought because your brain is jumping around so fast. There is no point in trying to like deal with your emotions like in a healthy way, because your brain is like literally not like anywhere
It's not
near
healthy.
being okay.
Mhm.
So it's not denial to just be like, I'm gonna deal with this later. For now, we're not thinking about anything serious. You know, we're not
That's so important.
it like we are watching silly movies and we are doing fluffy things and we are eating good food and we are taking bubble baths and we are like playing with squishy stuffed animals and pillows, and we like keep it fluffy, like absolutely. And I was like, the amount like that calmed me down, because I was going in with like a sense of like dread, where I was like, we're gonna have to like figure this out, like go deeper into these emotions. And she was like, no, we're not gonna deal with this right now. Like we're gonna deal with it later when you can actually think clearly, because your body is back on track. And I was like, really, I'm allowed to do that? And she's like, you have like, yes, like that's now the rule, like you can't, like I won't allow you to think about, you're not allowed to think about deep things. And I was like, okay. Awesome.
Okay.
What a relief, because I wasn't ready, like she's like, yeah. And so I like left her office, and I just remember this time so clearly, like how helpful it was, because I was just in such a dark place that I left her office and like the sun was shining and I was wearing like this like old sweatshirt and like athletic shorts, and there was like a park next to her office, and I like just like ran around the park. Like I just I just took off. I was like, here I go. Because I knew she had said something about exercise and I could feel the adrenaline, like physical adrenaline. So I was just running. And then I got in my car and I like blared music, and I was like, I feel so much better. It's ridiculous. So I went home and I made myself an egg and I stuffed it in my mouth, and I was like, just get through it. She told me to eat, like just get through it, like just swallow. Ate an egg, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna try and go to sleep. So I curled up on the couch, I turned on Parks and Rec, and I just let it go. I skipped all my classes this day also. And
Fair.
I like fell asleep, and then I woke up and I felt a lot better. And I was like, okay, now I'm gonna go like see a friend. And then I had my day, because that morning when I hadn't slept all last night and had been basically in a panic attack all night, I was thinking, I don't know how to get through this day. And so I was able to meet with her, and she told me like how to get through the day so that we could figure it out after I like got through the day. And so like that is what I mean by like emergency sessions. Um like how important that is. And it's just so interesting how like there's those moments, and like the I think that was a turning point for when I like really like trusted the therapy process, because she helped me get through the day. Whereas later we would have like a normal session and it would be super helpful and awesome. Um, but like I knew that that experience of like the emergency session wasn't the every time. Like it's not always that intense, but like how wonderful it is that like in those I don't know how to like move forward, that you have someone to be like, this is what you need to do. Like, thank goodness for that. Like, holy crap. Um,
Because they can look past, like, obviously they're outside of your head, so they can look past, like, all the irrational stuff.
mm-hmm.
And on top of that, like, they do care about you, but they also have the experience and knowledge that they can
And I think
truly
it
just be
was
like,
good. That was the first time that we had had an emergency session. I think it was good for her to like see me like that. I think it really helped her know more about like what I would talk about when I said that I would be anxious, or like I would be like really bad or whatever. She actually got to see it,
mm-hmm.
like how different I was like in those moments. Like she was able to get a better idea, because I get like my brain won't like form like words very well.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, so I would like I talk really slowly, which is funny because I'm like basically my heart's beating outside my chest, but like
Mm-hmm.
I'd be like, yeah, I don't know what's like happening. And she's like, okay, because usually I come in and I'm like, hi, like it's good, like yeah, I like had a really bad anxiety attack the other day. So that's what I'm normally like, and then I come in like raccoon eyes, and I'm like, I don't I don't know what's happening. And she's like, oh, okay, this is a different.
This is a problem.
And so then
Okay.
that's when we about figured out that medicine was going to be a thing. But yeah, she was able to make recommendations that I could trust,
Mm-hmm.
because one, she's like, she's not a medical doctor, but she is trained in like the brain, like
Yeah,
the
she's trained in figuring that stuff
psychology.
out.
Like
Yeah.
she went to all this school, and she has her personal experience, and she has years of experience as a counselor under her belt. Mine had been a counselor for like 12 years or something, like just like all this knowledge, and I'm coming in like a 22-year-old who, looking back, realized that I've always struggled with anxiety, but was experiencing a completely new like thing, and had no information on it. And so to just sort of like be given some clarity onto like what was going on without having to like frantically Google. This is Google. Google does not make a good therapist. Because I was researching, like, I thought for sure that I didn't actually have anxiety, that I had some sort of like other medical problem of some kind, like a brain tumor, or like whatever, like some sort of other thing, like hormonal, like thyroid issue or something, whatever. That was like, that's what was causing my anxiety. Which, saying it out loud, you're like, well, that's just everything that I just said right there is like a perfect example of why, yes, that's definitely anxiety. Like, me being like,
I don't have
it's
anxiety.
cancer.
What are you talking about?
It's like the most anxious thing you could possibly do. So, like textbook. So anyway, to be like, because I would be googling like all this, like what are like different medical conditions that give you anxiety. Oh my gosh. And then it's telling me,
Anxiety.
yeah, what about just like that? But WebMD did
But
not
anxiety
help
isn't
me.
real. What are you talking about?
I don't have that. I don't know what you're talking
But it's
about.
like, I don't know, so for me personally, so I had to switch because I had weekly sessions, and I had to switch from 9 a.m. because I was always missing my 9 a.m. sessions to 2 p.m. because I would
Yeah.
miss, and then she switched me to 11 a.m. and I was like, "Hi, I can't make it," and she was like, "How about we switch to 2 p.m.?" And I was like, "Can we?
yeah.
Can we do that?"
Yeah.
And then I like stopped missing. But it
There
was
you
so
go.
funny because like I get on certain days I feel like really energized after my counseling, but on days like yesterday,
It's
I
draining.
was exhausted
It can be really exhausting.
because I was having to like think about so many things and figure out so many different things. And like yesterday she was like, because what it looks like right now is I'm going to have to move back to Lubbock.
Mm-hmm.
And not necessarily that I have to, it's that Tyler and I are getting married and I'm going to move with him. I'm going to go with him. There's nothing keeping me, there's nothing tying me to any other town.
While he's finishing
So,
school. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I was saying it as like, well, you know, I've got nothing else, so I'm just going to go with him. And she was like, that's not a healthy way to frame this. Because she's like, that's not fair. She's like, that's not fair to either of y'all. Because she's like, Tyler is not your last option. So don't make him feel that way. She was like, you're going there because your husband is there. Yes, it's partially because you didn't get a job, but that means it's because you don't have like anything forcing you to stay somewhere else, and that you can go with him. And I was like, oh, you right. She was like, this is not you going just because you don't have a job. This is you getting to go stay with your husband while he finishes school. And she was like, that's not that weird of a thing. And like my brain was like, yes, but this is a step backwards. You're a failure. And she was like, no.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you're right.
I was thinking about that earlier because I was like, okay, this idea of like, because I was talking to one of our friends, Taryn. Our sweet Taryn. Shout out. And she was talking about how like because we've all graduated from teaching and like from our masters and whatever, it does feel like a step back because she's going to teach some classes this next semester because they asked her to, and that's what she's basically going to do as her job because she can't find anything else because good lord, the market right now. And she was like talking about how it feels like a step back, like it feels like you've moved on and then you're like, I'm back, hi everybody, like I didn't get a job kind of thing. And I feel like you probably feel the same way with the Lubbock idea, that it feels like you're going backwards or just staying still from like what you've already like moved on from and completed. But I was like, honestly, it's kind of both ways though, because I'm over here and I'm making this huge transition where I'm moving really far and starting this whole new phase of life. And that feels dumb too, you know, because like we're in the middle of a pandemic. Like it feels like the other morning I was feeling like, why didn't I just stay still? Like, why didn't I just keep it simple? Like, why am I trying to like complicate my life in this like already complicated time, whereas people who are like feel stuck or like, I feel stuck in such a complicated time. So basically what I was getting at is that no one, like no matter how you swing it, it kind of sucks, and it's like nobody's fault kind of thing for different reasons. Like it,
and kind of like
we all
none of
feel
us
like
know what we're doing.
exactly, like it all feels like a mistake. because there's so much outside of our control and none of it is what we expected. So I was thinking about like, okay, I don't see my therapist anymore, but like, what would she say to me, you know? And that is
Mm-hmm.
like a really helpful thing that I use now. I think it shows like, um, one, there was a time where I thought that I could never like not see my therapist, which is totally fine, by the way. Like, there's no one that says that there's a limit, that you have to stop after a certain point, that like that you have to keep going even when you don't want to. Like, there's really no rules for it, honestly. Um,
Mm-hmm. It's just doing what you feel is best for
yeah,
you.
and so when I stopped seeing my therapist, it seemed like the perfect like transition, you know. Um,
I remember
and
that. I remember when you talked about that.
one of the reasons is that now, like when I'm thinking about different things, my brain is able to be like, oh, like what would my therapist like? I know her, like, and I know kind of like what the vibe would be. Like, what would she say in this situation? I go, I know what she would say. Like, I can fill it in almost,
Mm-hmm.
which I think goes to show that like it's yeah that I like don't need her as much
That
as I
you're in a
used to.
healthy you're
Mm-hmm.
in a healthy place.
Yeah,
Like you are in
which
a
I am
very
like not always. Like, it's not saying that like I never have issues now. It's saying that when I do have issues, I'm like, okay, what would be like the thing here?
and
Um,
you also have a good enough support system now that just kind of sort of talking through it can sometimes get you there. So like
mm-hmm.
what was it, like a month ago or something, that we were both not having good days and we were just like, "Hi,
Yep.
I miss you. Let's talk." Cuz
Yes.
that's how I am a lot of times. Like if I know that it isn't something like big enough that I need to take to my therapist, I'm just like, what would Claire say here? Because she's
Yep.
very logical
I
when it comes to these kinds of
yes, I like
things.
texted you that one time because I was like, uh, when I'm in like a super bad place, I feel isolated because that's what my brain
Mm-hmm.
is telling me, that like no one understands you. So me being like, I had like this memory where I was like, oh my gosh, like I miss Kimmy so much because we would be like both. It was just so easy to be like, oh, like I've been feeling this way, and be able to be like, oh, I get it, like, and I was just like, that was our normal for a long
Mm-hmm.
time. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like I just miss her so much. So I texted you and was like, I don't know, I'm feeling off, and like I miss you and like all this stuff. And it just helps so much to just be like, oh my, like you were like OMG same or something.
Like just this, it's like that beacon at the end. Like
Yes.
it's literally like I'm having like it's such a bad time, and then it's like, oh, you are too. Hi, I miss
Hi, what's
you.
up, kind of
And
thing.
it's like finding that like
And I did
just
text her, like text my therapist, even though I hadn't been seeing her, because she said that I could. Like, we have a good relationship. And I was
Mhm.
just like, hey, like, I'm like, this is not normal. Like, this feels really off. Like, can you think of any reason, like, why that would be? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And her response, I was able to like fill in all the blanks, kind of like we were saying. Like, I was able to be like, oh, I get it, yep, okay, we're good. Because um like her assessment of like the situation, which like I barely gave her any information, I was able to be like, oh my gosh, yes. Like, basically the gist was there was so much like stressors like happening in my life, like so much going on, that even though my anxiety attack didn't have to do with any of those specifically, they're still kind of the cause, because that is
Mhm.
how like our bodies can like relate to stress, is that like anxiety and panic attacks don't have to do with always don't always have to do with like the things
specific
that are actually
triggers.
stressing us out. They can just
Mhm.
be about random stuff. Like, they don't have to be related, but like the actual cause is that like the stressors in our life has gone up.
Mhm.
Um and so like that, like is just, I don't know. Like, that was just really helpful. Like, in 2 seconds, I was able to be like, gotcha. It's not that something's wrong with my medication. It's not that, like, this isn't fixable. It's not, like, all of these things that I was thinking in my head that, like, oh no, what do I do if my medication has stopped working? It was basically saying, like, of course you're experiencing anxiety, you weirdo. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
There's a lot,
like
but
there's a lot
but
going
yes,
on.
but like
Of
your
course you
situation
are.
has changed so
Like,
much. Like
your
it's completely
body
understandable.
is like reacting to the things around you, even if your mind is in a relatively healthy place. Of course, you're going to randomly freak out when you experienced an intense emotion. But what I was confused about is that the intense emotion that I was experiencing was a positive one. So I was like, why am I having anxiety? Like, after, like, having, like, a good cry. That makes no sense. Everything's
Welcome
heightened.
to the world of anxiety.
Yes, that's how, like, that's where I'm like, it's so helpful for me to understand medically how anxiety works. To be told that that's normal. Yeah, and just being like, yeah, that makes sense from, like, an anxiety standpoint, because basically being told that, like, anxiety has no rhyme or reason is helpful to me.
Yeah, well, because that's, and it's so funny because that's what Tyler gets so frustrated with, because he wants to be logical and he wants to logic everything away.
That's how my
And
dad is.
when I have an anxiety attack, he's just like, well, this isn't logical. I'm like, yes,
You're like,
logic
that's
doesn't
the
exist here.
freaking point.
Like, yes, welcome to my anxiety room. Logic doesn't
And that's
exist
the
here.
problem,
Thank
is
you.
that, like, you know, and that's also part
I
of
know
the anxiety.
everything's
You're
illogical.
like, I know that this isn't right. I'm still thinking it. And that's almost anxious within itself to be like, yeah, I know what the answer, but I still feel it. What do I do?
Well, and then for a while too, like I'm much better about it now, but lately my anxiety has been pretty bad just because of all the life changes. And I hit that wall of what's my anxiety talking and what's like actual concerns, right?
Yes.
Because for like, I think maybe 5 minutes yesterday, after my counselor was like, don't get married, just, to, do all this stuff. I was like sitting there for, like, after counseling, I was like,
Do I want to get
no,
married?
I love him. Like, no, I love him and I want to be with him. But am I only thinking these things because I want to think these things?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
And my brain was like, and like the like logical, like the small dying logical part of me was like, well, of course you want to marry him, you absolute moron. You've been talking about this for months.
I know.
And like the other part of me was like, but what if I'm just getting married for security? And the other was like, you've literally been talking about this. There's nothing secure. Like, I mean, like there's marriage, like the marriage itself is secure, but like the circumstances surrounding it, none of that is
Those
secure.
are all chaos. But yeah.
And I was like, there's nothing. And so then like she and I talking about, she's like, there's nothing wrong with like wanting to marry him because you want to marry him, and like because you love him and you want to be together,
Yeah.
and like you want. She's like, he is where you feel safe, and he's like the one thing you're sure about right now. She's like, there's nothing wrong with clinging to that. And I was like, oh, you right.
Yes. Yes.
You right.
Yes. I love that.
Because I was just like, no, I do want to marry him. And she's like, okay, that's good. She was like, if you don't get excited about it. And I was like, it's like the nervous excitement where like marrying him itself, like so exciting. And I can't wait to spend the rest of our lives together and like figure things out. But then like the anxious part of me is like, but we're not financially stable.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, you will never be.
No. That's true.
She's like, you'll never feel financially stable. And she's like, life is never going to work the way that you want it to. And I was like, you right. Do I like that? No. But you right.
Yep.
Because I was like, 2020 has just been, she was like, again, I'm going to sound mean, but she's like, you got to get rid of that image. She was like, life is never going to be exactly what you want it to be. It's never going to work out the way you want it to.
Gosh,
There's
yes.
always going to be things happening
Yes.
that you don't like, that you didn't plan for. And she was like, you've just got to like
Wow.
cling to what you know, cherish what you know, and like work with it.
Oh.
Because she was like, because she was asking me, because yesterday was when I made the decision of whether or not I was going to move with Tyler or not during counseling. And she was like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, what I want to do isn't an option. And she goes, okay, it's not an option. We're getting rid of it. And I was like, but that's what I want. And she was like, I don't mean like ideal. What do you want?
Yeah.
She was like, out of the options that you have, what do you want? And I was like, I want to be with him. And she was like,
there you go.
do it.
Simple
and I
as
was like,
that.
oh, because she was like, if I'm being honest, I think you're making this a lot harder than it needs to be. And I was like, yes, that's what I do.
Yes, you're like, you've hit the nail
And
on
she
the
was
head
like,
there, hon.
and she was like, you know, I don't want to be mean. I was like, oh no, I need this.
Tell it to me straight. Like,
I was like, because she was like, I don't want it to come off as like me just being like a mean person. And I was like, oh no, like this is 100% what I need. I need you to sit there, look me in the eye and say, you're kind of being dumb.
Yeah, exactly.
And you are overcomplicating all of this so much further than what it needs to be.
Yes, OMG.
But also, like, it was almost like a cold bucket of water over the head, her being like, do not get married as a, like, some sort of safety net.
Yep.
And so then I was sitting there going, am I getting married? Because it's
Yeah, then you had to work through that thought.
Because then I had to be like, but is it?
Oh my gosh. That's
and
so
it was
funny.
so funny because I could tell she could see me doing
She could see me like, wait, am I? She probably knew her saying that was going to get that reaction out of you too. But then she's like, okay, I'm going to say this and then we're going to have to like deal with that. But then like, we'll get somewhere eventually. I know. Oh my gosh.
But that's what's so great about having that. And it's so funny because like, when you were still seeing your therapist, you would like, I remember we would like be sitting at a coffee shop or something and you'd say something and I'd be like, in my brain, I'd be like, that's too much for me to be able to help her with. And so I'd literally just go, you told your therapist?
Have you told your therapist about this? Oh
when are you seeing your therapist next? And sometimes you'd be like, 3 weeks. And I'd be like, maybe you should see your therapist sooner than that.
Timeline. Yeah.
And so Tyler does the same thing to me. Because he knows her name, and so he'll just be like, have you told her this?
Mm-hmm.
When are you seeing her? When are you talking to her? He's like, you need to tell her this.
Oh yeah. No, for a long time it was the same thing. My mom, when I would go through stuff, she would be like, okay, what would your therapist say? And yeah, a lot of my friends would do the same thing. One of my friends, the same one I was talking about earlier with like the whole like financial stuff, she was looking for one for a while, and so I've been going through this thing where I was telling her about my experience where I was like, it really is like the process of finding one is so hard because she was like struggling. Like we would ask her about it and be like, so like have you like called anybody, like have you looked into it and like picked one or something like that? And she'd be like, yeah, not yet. And I was like, oh, that's such a mood. Oh my gosh. Like, where like once you make the decision to like, I'm going to go get therapy.
I feel that, yeah, not yet in my bones.
Yes, it is so like, because like it takes a long process even if you were like fully motivated constantly. But like, it's so hard. Like you just be like, oh yeah, I haven't like actually reached out yet. Like it's been like a month. And then when you finally do, they're like, oh yeah, like, I don't have any openings until like September or like whatever. Anyway, you're like, good Lord. But yes, I've been feeling that. But yeah, it's like this idea of like when someone says something, and I remember doing this too, and being like, counseling. Like,
well, like, I don't even remember.
Like, ooh.
I don't even remember the first time I said it to you. And I remember, I think it was Tanner was like, that's a little harsh. And I was like, no, but for real though, like, this is like above what I can help. Like, me giving advice would be more detrimental.
Yes. Instead of being like,
than me just being like, you need to talk to your therapist.
Being like, yes, you should talk. Like, this is a therapy
Talk
thing.
to your trained professional.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I know. Like, sorry, I keep getting text messages. I don't know if you can hear those.
It's okay. No, I can hear them. You have other friends than me? Gosh.
There's like everyone and their grandmother is deciding to text me all at this one time. But what was I gonna say? What were we talking about before that? Ugh.
Like telling our friends like they need therapy.
Oh yeah.
Well,
Oh,
and
that's what it was. Just sort of the
it's
taking out the like seriousness of it. Um, because for like my parents, oh, that's another thing, like telling your parents that you need therapy. Um,
telling your parents that they need therapy.
LOL. Like it's one of the reasons I think it's really hard, even if your parents are super understanding of therapy, is that I think it's just really difficult for like to like admit that like things are bad
It's admitting
enough,
weakness.
and also like because it feels like it's taking it up to a next level, and having to tell your parents that like you know that it's gonna like get real basically, and I know that that's really hard. And then also parents don't want to feel like they've done something wrong, that the reason you're struggling so much is because like could they
Something
have
they've
done something
done.
different kind
Mm-hmm.
of thing. um but like part
Eh,
of that is just like that's stuff that they got to deal with. Like you need therapy when you need therapy. And for my parents, they're really when they have both been to therapists, and the therapists have been really 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 helpful for them like earlier on in their marriage. And so like when I was really little, so they're like really for therapy. But what they were going through was so like it wasn't just a mental health thing. What they were
mm-hmm.
going through was like a thing that happened,
Mm-hmm.
and that they were like dealing with and had to
And
like work
working
through. And
through.
then when they
Mm-hmm.
went, they had to like deal with like their childhoods and stuff, you know? Okay. So they were like, it was different. So in my head, I was like,
But
it's
that
not
hasn't happened to me,
it
so
that
it's not.
exactly, it's not that bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it feels like when you say like I need therapy, it feels like you're admitting a weakness, but what it really is, it's like you're showing strength because it takes a lot to be able to be like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
there's something wrong and I can't do this on my own.
Mm-hmm.
I need someone to help me. And so like I think my family's tired of me saying it because they'll say something like, "Have you tried therapy?
Oh,
Maybe you should get a therapist.
oh my
I can help
gosh.
you find a therapist."
Yes.
And like my nephew has some like some anxiety. And poor kid, he's so anxious.
Mm.
And like I talked to my sister, I'm like, "You tried a therapist?"
Yeah, I've seen the same
Like I'm
therapist.
not joking. Like get him a therapist. Like I
And
know
they're
he's
all like,
young, but
oh,
like,
please stop. But it's
and they're
for
all like,
real though.
but I'm also like, and I'm sitting there going, yeah, man, my relationship with my therapist, great.
Like we're pals and we're bros.
It was so funny too, because like right around when she found out that she was pregnant, I think she told like a few of her patients because like she was just sitting there and she was like,
Aw.
it's not that I'm being like rude. It's just like I'm pregnant and so like I'm going through this. And I was like, oh no, you good, like totally.
Oh, I know.
But it was so funny.
I know. It's so great. I
Therapists are like
like
friends you pay for. I'm kidding.
yes. Oh my gosh, seriously.
I'm
But like, I
kidding.
mean, I know you are, but like, oh my gosh. Yeah, and one of our other friends like she went to a therapist, and she was seeing him for a while, and it like did not go well.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so interesting to hear about and be like, that is a perfect example of like when the therapist is not the right fit. Like just the way she felt afterwards. And I'm not saying that his type of therapy like wouldn't work for other people, but he was very like he could be very invalidating of like her
Mm-hmm.
feelings. And I think for some people, maybe that would help. That would be kind of like a tough love kind of thing, you know? Like I
Mm-hmm.
could see that. Um,
For some people, it probably
and for
works,
like
but for
really,
her, it definitely
no,
it was not
it
the
did,
thing.
like because her being like da 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 da, and like he said something that basically translated to kind of like grow up,
Ooh.
like something about maturity or something. I don't remember
Mm-hmm.
the story
Mm-hmm.
exactly because that was a long time ago. And she was telling me that, and she was telling me like how mad it made her. And I was like, "Hun, I don't think this is one of those things like
It's just like a
just
therapy
like
thing. I think this
yeah,
is like
I and like you're mad because you're like, I know I don't want to hear it, but like it's true. No, no, he like insulted you. And even if he
mhm,
didn't mean to, this just doesn't feel like you don't there's nothing that seems like it's would be like a trust thing. You
mhm.
know? Like you don't trust him now, right? And she was like, "No." And I was like, "Yeah, you need a new therapist.
Yeah, you need to find
You
someone
need
that
to
you
find someone
trust.
else." And she found someone else and was like, "Holy crap. Like the difference. Like you're not supposed to trust the other person right away, but like you are not like that
You're not supposed to feel
like
like
you never
just
can.
completely like
If you're coming in and you immediately feel invalidated, you immediately feel like you can't be honest because they're going to like not really listen to you, or that they're going to give you some sort of like advice that makes you angry like right away. Um Not in a way that makes you feel safe, that you can like say the things that you need to say and like deal with it and like get to know you. No. It's not that like you're just like in denial or you're too weak to handle like hard truths. That's not what that was. That was
definitely not.
just bad therapy, in my opinion. And I was like, you should leave a review like on like
On Yelp.
yeah, like on whatever it is. Like that where you like talk about therapists. So I was like, no, that and also I think for her it made her uncomfortable and she wasn't even like admit it, but like I think it made her uncomfortable that it was a guy. Because
Mhm.
invalidating
Understandable.
I'm not invalidating like the idea that like you can definitely have like a fully like helpful like different genders for counseling. I'm not saying that at all.
Mhm.
But like I know
But some
her
people it just feels
and
uncomfortable.
like I think she just really needed to be like seeing a woman. Like that's just how it is.
Well, and
Like
it's just because I think also with her experiences with men in the past,
mhm.
like it just made it harder for her. And it's like, that's completely valid.
Yeah.
And you need to like,
I
and
was
that's
like,
something that's so
so you
important
need
is
to think
like
about that. And I'd say the same
validating that.
thing would be with like faith and stuff. That like, um, I think that you can have like a very very healthy like relationship with your therapist. Like if you're a Christian or not a Christian, and they're not a Christian or you're a Christian, I think that like you can do that. Like I've seen that work because like you get maybe your spiritual like stuff like from another source or like something like that, right?
Hmm.
Um,
But for some people, like that's
especially with
important.
psychiatry, like specifically,
Hmm.
like neurology and stuff like that. But I think that like for me and like for you, like what the way that we talked about it, and I think for her too, like like if like faith at like the core of like who you are and how you see the world, that's obviously going to affect mental health. And for me, like I know that there are like smart men out there, but like I'm like a tiny little girl. Like I don't know if I could feel comfortable, like fully comfortable talking about like my innermost stuff like with a guy. And I that's not judgmental, like that's just like
Yeah, that's
legit and it
just,
should like affect your search.
and that was a big thing for me too. Was church was also a big. It was a big source of my anxiety for a long
Oh,
time
same. I was going
because
through like some of my anxiety had to do with like God stuff.
well,
So
in
like
mine, that's the sad part. Yours was like understand. I mean, mine was understandable too, but like yours was existential stuff,
yeah,
and it was like, is this right? But mine was that horrible
I
experience
know.
with dating,
Oh
and
yeah, there
I
was like
kind
an
of hit
actual
that.
like person at your church.
There was an actual person that I'd gone through all of that with, and he was still at that church, and he was still acting normal, and I was like, I'm not okay with this because I don't feel. It's like not necessarily that I don't feel safe, but I kind of don't feel safe,
Well, yeah, but
and being around
I
him
think
like
that
makes
that
me incredibly
does
anxious.
have to do with like spiritual stuff because this idea that like someone who hurt you like is in like a place where you're supposed to be like connecting with your faith,
Mhm.
like that
It
messes
was
with you.
huge.
That messes with you.
And something that I probably took a little bit too far to heart when she said it, because then I just stopped going in general. But she was like, if it makes you anxious, don't force yourself to do it. And she was like, I'm not saying skip church altogether, which is what I ended up doing. But she was like, if you go and you start having an anxiety attack, don't go. Like, don't just purposely put yourself in that situation.
What a thought.
Now I took that as, I shall never go.
Never again. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Which was not good either.
Mm-hmm.
But something that was really important that she talked to me about, she was like, if you miss because you're feeling too anxious to go, do not sit there and beat yourself up for the rest of your day.
Like what? Yeah, because what would that benefit anything?
And I was like, good advice. Will I follow it? Probably not.
LOL. Oh my gosh. It's already been an hour 15.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna well, thank you for listening to anxiety, depression, and the real questions. If you have questions, you can comment them. I'm gonna link the like search thing through Psychology Today or whatever
good
it is
idea. So
down below
So good.
in the description, so you can go look at that if you're looking in need of therapy and stuff.
Yay.
If you have good or bad experiences, you could also share that. We love hearing about that kind of stuff. Like
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff we like talking about. So, but yeah, thanks for listening.
Woo.
We will see you next time.
See you
Bye.
next time. Bye.